SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon spacecraft stand on Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Credit: NASA. Bill IngallsMission managers will be closely monitoring the weather for the first launch of astronauts aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft, not just around the Kennedy Space Center, but along a corridor stretching thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean in case the Crew capsule has to escape from its Falcon 9 rocket during the climb into orbit. The parameters to screen for acceptable weather downrange were added on top of the standard launch weather rules that track cloud, lightning and wind conditions at Cape Canaveral. The official weather outlook for Wednesday's launch opportunity, set for 4:33 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time 2033 GMT, calls for a 60% chance of favorable conditions for liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket from the Kennedy Space Center with astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken on board. But those odds only take into account the weather forecast at the launch site. SpaceX and NASA officials will consider weather conditions downrange in the Atlantic Ocean during Wednesday's countdown before making the final decision to launch. "We have a really complicated way of weighting different locations, depending on how much risk they have in terms of an escape," said Hans Koenigsmann, SpaceX's Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability. For the landing, there are also special parameters: winds, waves and wave direction. Some of these individually have to go green and be a go, and then on the entire launch corridor we have a common risk number that we use to basically make an assessment, and then get to a go, no-go decision, Koenigsmann said Monday. The downrange weather assessment involves risk matrices and numerous factors. To illustrate the various criteria, Koenigsmann said a weather briefing Monday looking at the abort weather constraints consisted of 65 presentation slides. "It took an hour, so it's a lengthy process to get to the best result, getting the safest flight that we can possibly get with the current weather," Koenigsmann said. According to NASA's list of launch commit criteria for the SpaceX Crew launch, the flight will not proceed if downrange weather shows a high probability of violating limits at splashdown in the event of a Dragon launch escape maneuver. Mission managers will monitor weather conditions at more than 50 locations along the launch ascent track, which heads northeast from the Kennedy Space Center along the east coast of the United States and Canada. The corridor then extends across the North Atlantic Ocean toward Ireland. Probability of violation is calculated for each location including limit conditions for wind, waves, lightning, and precipitation, NASA officials wrote in a launch weather criteria document for the Crew mission.